Welcome to the Vigor Life Podcast, a source of inspiration, lessons, stories, skill sets, mindsets, and strategies to invigorate and expand all areas of your life. Let's go. Hey, what's going on? Coach Luka back here with the Vigor Life Podcast. And today is kind of I'm actually excited about today's one because it's going to be a mix of talking about just not a lot about my trip to Brazil, which is probably going to be a second one, which was unbelievable and kind of definitely somewhat life-changing. I was out there shooting a documentary with my brother about movement culture and pretty much how different places, countries, I would say dictate how we move and behave. Like environments trigger behaviors. I always say that. And then what people are doing that's working in different places. So in Brazil, we were doing everything from, doing jiu-jitsu with the top guys in the world, like Gracie Barra headquarters. We went to Claudio Coelho's gym, which is the most famous boxing coach in Brazil, which was absolutely, for me, such an inspirational experience that has drove me to start doing more charity and I'm going to talk about that another time because I'll go deep into that and it's just like, whoa. We talked to some of the top surfers, played foot volley, capoeira, you name it, right? I'm literally, we went to some of the most dangerous favelas as well, and it was just very, very enlightening. Like I said, there's a lot of lessons there that I could talk about, and we'll talk about in a future podcast. But I had this, because I left. At first, I told my brother, because my brother's doing this project where it's not, we went to Rio, but he's also going to Iran next. We're probably going to hit up Japan, Tokyo, Okinawa, and there's a bunch of other places. And this is a pure passion project funded by us with some incredible guys that, kind of came along for the ride and incredible photographers and video guys too. So I'll send some links to because they do some amazing work. But at first my brother was like, hey, here's what I'm doing. I was like, oh man, I want to be a part of that for sure. And then the time came by. He said, hey, I'm going in April. And I said, I'm sorry. I said, I'm going in March. And I said, man, I don't know if I can do that. I'm so busy. The gym's opening. I'm building this online course. It's just like I'm working, 15, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. And, and I was like, I probably won't be able to make it. So I get off the phone, and that week afterwards, I had like a panic attack. And just from like tons of work, the anxiety of like all this, just like 1,000 moving parts going on. And I hit him up. I said, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going. It's like I had a bunch of conferences in San Diego to go to for marketing and stuff, and like 9-10 days in between, I could hit up Rio. So we made it happen. So that's just kind of like a context behind this. But it was my way. It was getting away, right? I was getting away to create space to remove myself. This is what works well for me, and I'm going to touch on this today on what we're going to be talking about. It moved me away from kind of the essentially the eye of the storm, right? Let's just call the eye of the storm everything that's going on in your life, business, like I said, for me, like building this new gym, construction, creating tons of resources, leading the team, you stack all this up. You can stack on top of that, family, kids, all of it. So I just wanted to create some space and get some time for myself, even though this was not a true vacation because we were running around a lot and shooting these, the videos and doing interviews and stuff like that. But it did create some contrast for me. And I'm going to talk about contrast too a little bit. But this podcast is actually about the happiness advantage, right? It's what we all strive for, is to be happier. But, I'm going to loop this back in because I do feel like I wanted to tell the story of what made me even shoot this podcast and talk about this stuff. And, what made me kind of really have this revelation of, man, I still need to change a lot of things in my day and my life and share these, I would say, insights with you because this is, I think we're all kind of programmed somewhat wrong in how to be more fulfilled and be happier. So, this revelation kind of popped up at me as I was, we're on the beach and we were in, I think, Baja Beach I think it was Baja Beach when my brother used to play pro soccer and stuff, so he loves soccer. And I was, playing foot volley, which is kind of like volleyball, but, you use your head and your foot with some locals. And, the guys were like filming it and stuff. But, man, we're just like having a blast, playing, having fun. And and just, I don't know, probably for an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours or something like that. And we're just lost in the moment, right? We call it flow, and I'll touch on that in a little bit later. And at the end of it, I'm just smiling, I'm sweating. Like, we're looking at the photos that Mathias like took, and you can see our faces. We're just engaged. We're just laughing. We're those guys are kicking our ass most of the time because they're really good at it. And at the end, as we're walking down the beach, I'm like thinking about it, going, man, how, like, that didn't take any money. It didn't take, it was right there in front of me, right? Spending time with a person that I love and care about, doing some cool stuff, some fun stuff that was engaging, that would challenge me. And there was nothing else in the world for that hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever amount of time we were playing. I was so stress-free. And, you come back to the world and you think about all this stuff, and all of a sudden, right, like some stress might set in, anxiety might set in. Oh, I got to send all these emails. Like, it's 4 hours behind. What if this happened? What if that happened? And that was the thing that just made me go, man, like, there is, we could be so much more fulfilled and happier on a daily basis with everything that we already have. Now, you might go like, oh, I know that, Luka. Well, listen, I know that shit too, right? I've read like 100 books on happiness. I got notes like for days. But it's a big difference when you kind of see that you continue to fall back to a certain default. So my default is, I work a lot, right? And I love what I do, right? So I'll go back to this. I do love what I do, but there's still a lot of stress and anxiety around like, projects and constantly pushing for stuff. And I don't take enough time to do things that make me happy without anything. And so, years ago, like, this friend made me do a drill, like on the spot, right? On the spot. And I'm gonna challenge you to do this drill. Like, even, stop this podcast, do this drill. And if you do this, it will be like, you literally could take a ton away from it. So the drill was, and it was kind of out of the blue, right? She was like, hey, put this down. Like, here's a piece of paper. I want you to write down 10 things that make you happy without anything or anybody. Like, so you don't need anybody else to make you happy with, you know what I mean? And so and she was like, yeah, 2 minutes, right? And I started going, oh shit, okay. And I started writing it down, just off, like, from the heart, kind of like what I felt. At the end of the 2 or maybe like 3 minutes, I had this list. She said, hey, what, all right, so check this. Like, what you wrote down, what are the things that you do today? Like, out of that list, how much do you do? And like, literally, there was 1 or 2 things off that list that I did. One probably regularly, which is like, some form of training, but which kind of we could cross it out because, it's like I just do that. It's like such a habit, right? But majority of the stuff I just didn't do, and 90% of it was free. Like, there was no excuse for, time, money, any type of that stuff. It was literally just, I can give you a couple of those. Like, for me, drawing was on there. Like, I love to draw. Draw makes me like lose myself. I calm down. My grandpa taught me how to draw. Like, I loved it. I've always loved drawing. I'm like, man, I haven't drawn for months. I like, believe it or not, writing music because, this is probably a story for another day. When I was like 14, 15, we had one of the first hip hop groups in Slovenia and made, I think, the second video ever of hip hop video. That may come out sometime. I'll do you guys a favor and bring that out someday. So I love doing that. Love being outdoors and hiking. I love exploring even like the city, like Seattle, right? So going to a place I haven't been, checking out a new cafe. So I started writing all these different things down, and like I said, I just don't do majority of them. And all it would take is, some things would take 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Some things would take a couple of times a week for an hour. It's kind of like the foot volley, right? It's kind of like the foot volley where it's like, basketball was on the list. Man, like, I started playing ball, like, I'm lost for 3 hours. Love it, right? And I was like, man, like, here's all these things that could make me happier, more fulfilled, like, just more engaged. And I'm not doing them, right? So you got to remember that, and I'm going to get to this, the science part of, happiness is that you always got a default, right? There's a default that you come back to. And it's been proven that about 50% of your happiness is genetic, right? 10% is circumstance. So circumstance, like who you're married to, what you have, what house you live in, all that is just 10%. And that's what people give a lot of value. People think that circumstance is like 90%, but it's just 10. And then 40 is things that you can completely influence, right? With really training your happiness. And we're going to go in that in a little bit. But to come back to this, right? Sometimes, because my mind goes to this place of what we've been taught, and that is what? Do great work, be a big success or succeed in whatever that thing is, and then be happy, right? So that's the cycle. Like that's literally like for many generations, kind of like what's been taught. I mean, even from books, from environments, from everything. Where the reality is, and then science has now proven this, right? That if you're happy now, you'll do better work, you'll do great work, and you'll reach success. And, and this is like, obviously tons of studies. When Harvard first came out with a happiness, how to be happy class, they didn't know how to do. And literally like 1,200 students signed up and they were like, holy shit, how like, there's so many people that are seeking to be more fulfilled. They're working hard, they might be successful, but they're just not happy, right? Because they got it all wrong. We got it all wrong. And the thing is, you got to keep coming back to that. What I mean by that is you can read, like I have, like legit, I probably have read 100 books on happiness. No shit. Does it mean that I just wake up every day and like I'm always, I would say happier? No, like you got to keep coming back to that. Just like the book Essentialism, which is one of my favorite books. Jay Ferrugia got me to read that book and I read it every year now. And the author says, like essentialism is something we have to keep coming back to. We have to keep asking ourselves, like, what's important now? Because you get away from it, right? I would say the environment, the media, the social structures, they pull you back into this like, oh, you got to have more and be significant and be successful, then you'll be happy. And you got to keep reminding yourself back to go to like what's important now, to go back to asking yourself what is fulfilling, to fill out that piece of paper that says, what are the 10 things that make you happy, that you love doing, and just writing it down and creating that awareness like, oh shit, I'm not doing any of that. And then going, okay, I'm going to make an action right now. So tomorrow I'm going to go salsa dance. Sunday, hey, I'm hitting my guys up and we're doing a play basketball, right? Friday night, I'm doing the movies. Saturday, I'm going to make dinner for my friends at my house and we're going to play music and eat some good food and hang out, right? And like all free shit, you know what I mean? Like the only thing I think that on my list was education and like travel, and the thing is like even travel doesn't have to be, crazy luxury, right? It can be driving down to Portland or Cannon Beach for like a weekend and unplugging, right? So these were these huge revelations that I was having that and especially because, I'm one of those people, and like I've been pretty transparent, I've been damn transparent on this podcast about, my search for significance and how my childhood influenced that, and doing that made me fuck up like a lot of relationships. I got divorced, messed up a marriage, burnt a lot of things down. Pretty much I was, by the grace of I don't know what, stayed out of jail when I was younger, and this was all in this search for significance. But like if I stop and look back, like the most memorable, times in my life were things that didn't involve like having a ton of money or having a great car or, people going like, oh, you're the man and shit like that, right? So on a daily basis, like how many things do we give up? Do we give up to try to impress other people or, like fit in or, like not be excluded from the tribe or feel significant enough because we don't love ourselves or whatever, where we could literally choose to be happier on the spot, right? So, where does this all stem from? And without going crazy deep into this, all that, because I get really geeky with this stuff. If you look at like thousands and thousands of years of programming, think about how we operated. Step number one, look for a problem. Is there a saber-toothed tiger, man? Do we need to get food? Like, oh shit, right? So we find a problem, right? And then we look for a problem, we find a problem, and then we solve the problem, right? That's literally how we've operated, right? Look for problems, find problem, solve problem. And so when you have that ingrained in your nervous system, the way your brain functions for thousands of years, like you're not changing it in hundreds or let alone tens. Now, I'm saying that as a civilization. I'm not saying that as an individual, because some of the things I'm going to talk about is how you can rewire your brain to be happier, to be more positive, to make more shit happen, and to get into that loop, be happy, great work, big success, right? So, and obviously got a couple of notes here, man, because otherwise I'll veer off completely. So if we've been programmed for these 3 steps to always look for problems, you know, that's essentially probably why you don't celebrate your successes, right? Like you win, woo, explosion. Okay, where's the next problem, right? And we're kind of wired ourselves to only get this kind of like fulfillment when we solve the problem and you know, get to the goal, and then it's gone again. And then we got to work for it, and we got to fight for it, we got to fight for it. And then most of the time is actually spent in a feeling of possibly stress and anxiety and unfulfillment, right? Whereas you can, if you start enjoying the process and, you know, do some of the things that I'm going to talk about in a little bit, now you can be way more fulfilled, you can do better work, and it's kind of like becomes this different loop, right? Now, it doesn't mean, like, first of all, right, let's not get it twisted, right? It doesn't mean life is not hard, there's not challenges and all this other shit, right? That's just reality. Like, I'm a big fan of positive psychology, but the whole thing, like, you always got to be positive and stuff like that, you know, that's not completely real. Like, without contrast, right? Without contrast, we can't feel the joy. And just to give you an example, what I mean by contrast, like, look, somebody that has grown up and got everything given to them, like, you know, what most people would think is, you know, like, hey, they got the money, they got the job, they got the this, they got the that, but that's all they knew, right? They might be completely miserable, but they've also never had contrast in their life. They don't know what it is like to struggle or what's hard or what's, you know, whatever else. And so, you know, with that said, like, we need contrast. Like, for instance, why do I believe travel is something that's so important, you know, especially internationally, going to places like I said, and I've lived in like Ukraine, and I've lived in, you know, third world countries, and I just went to Brazil and, like, you know, kind of stayed in the favelas quite a bit, and then it creates this contrast, like, holy shit, like I forgot, you know, I grew up in socialism, but that was normal to me back then, right? And then you move, I moved to London for a while, and it's just like, woo, contrast. Holy shit, like, there's such a big difference. You know, to go to places, you know, I've been to Africa, like, where you go to places and you go like, wow, man, what are some of these people doing? And they're so amazing and so awesome, but, like, they don't have much, right, of what we think that we need for happiness. And it doesn't mean that things are just great for them, because, you know, that's absolutely not true. You know, there's a lot of hard things and harsh things that happen there. But it's like, you know, I've also seen people salsa in the street that have nothing, and it's just like they're having a blast, right? So there's all these lessons that you can learn in that thing. Like I said, playing foot volley or going surfing, or, you know, like, all these things that engage people and make them happier, even though we don't have this, you know, the car, the money, the whatever, right? And so there's all these lessons here. But remember, contrast. Without contrast, it's like, hey, if it was always sunny, would you be so excited about it? You know, you just wouldn't, period, right? Like, if there was no rain or snow or storms or clouds, like, would you even really give a shit about the sunshine? You'd probably be like, fuck, man, I hope you know, this shit's beating down on me. I wish it would go away, right? And so we forget about that. So creating contrast in your life is important. And it's also a big reason why, you know, we have to remind ourselves of our wins and things like that. But I'm going to dig into this, right? So I'm going to go into, like, the 7 ways to be happy now. And, you know, you've probably heard in different books this been mentioned. I got a couple of other things that I go to, and, like, some of my own insights for this. But these are things that, like, universally have been studied, and there's been more studies than I can count on that they work. And what it really comes down to is you taking some of this and making it a daily practice to implement, so that you do start rewiring your brain. Because, look, neuroplasticity is real now. We know that, you know, not even just at a young age, at an older age, we can I would say not only reframe events, but rewire our brain to see things a certain way, right? Like, that an obstacle is a lesson, you know, how to get ourselves out of stress and anxiety faster, how to from something that was very hard on us. We can turn it around, reframe it, and find a lesson from that makes us get better and move forward, right? So a couple of things. One of the ways of the 7 ways to be happy now is, some people call it the 3 walks. It's let's just say exercise and activity. And I'll start with that because, I own Vigor on Fitness and Performance. And honestly, that was my first kind of like, man, for me, it was like fitness changed my life. Then started studying it and like realizing that you actually see studies that exercise, is more effective than a lot of the anxiety medicine. It's a lot more effective than, at treating even, I would say, depression and things like that. Now, obviously, look, there's meds that are necessary and help, but like these are the things that have been proven, right? It aligns dopamine and norepinephrine. It's if you want to, like, if you're like in your head and stressed out and like or you're anxious about something that's coming up, whether it's a meeting or having to talk to someone, man, just like do 5 explosive burpees, see how you feel later, or yell. Seriously, you'll see that like it changes the chemicals in your body. And the thing is too, for every single one of these things that I mentioned, there's a backdrop of when you're happier, your cognitive capacity increases, right? So we know that we can learn better. We move out of our kind of like limbic system, our emotional system essentially to, especially if you're under threat. And you can focus on different things, right? You can see things more positively. It can change your mood. Like even something as simple as, and like once again, I'm not referencing studies, but you can look the stuff up, is, if you're kind of like in a shitty mood, but then somebody makes you laugh, right? Makes you laugh and happy, or you look at a video on YouTube that, that makes you giggle, like instantly afterwards, like it shifts your mindset. And after that, like you'll be more open to suggestion and like learning. You'll be able to remember things better. You'll be more creative, right? Because it changes the way that I would say the chemicals in our brain, right? So all of these that I'm going to talk about does that, but exercise is like one of the best ones. And it doesn't have to be, because what they found is like, something as simple as 3 to 4 walks of 30 minutes a week can really shift how we feel. And one of the things that I do almost every day is go to, walk the park, Kulan Park. I get up, I put my podcast in, not my own one, but like I listen to podcasts, and it's about a 35 to 40 minute walk. And man, like that, like starting the day like that just makes my day so much better. I feel better. I feel more clear. I have less anxiety and stress. And on top of that, I got in probably like, I don't know, like 300, 400, 500 calories, whatever it may be, just walking around. And I'm educating myself with the podcast, right? So it doesn't have to be intense exercise, and I'm not going to go into the huge benefits of exercise and lifting weights and energy system work. That I hope that everybody knows that, and we go deeper into that in other podcasts. But this is one of the 7 ways to be happy now, right? Is exercise and activity, right? Number 2 is the 20-minute replay, and some people call it the 20-minute replay. Is like basically writing out positive experiences or relationships. I'm gonna give a little twist to this as far as like how I also use this, something called positive focus that I've talked about before. But if you recollect the positive things that have happened in a day, now you could do this on a daily basis. I think that's tough for a lot of people to do, but you could start on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, just writing out an experience that you had that that was positive. A person that you met, that you caught up with. A learning experience, something that you did in that day where it was involved giving and fulfilling you, a person that you care about, that creates a positive relationship in your life, whatever it may be, and with that said, positive focus is very similar. So it's something that I learned from Warrior, but it's either a positive experience that you explain, and what we ask ourselves is what, why, lesson, apply. So what happened? Why was it positive, right? What was the lesson learned? Because imagine if you had to like put up a banner, right? What was the lesson learned from this? And it was like this one quote. You'd say that. And then the last one is apply. Okay, how are you going to apply this into different areas of your life? Body, business, body being balanced in business. So essentially, like anytime you get a lesson from something, it's smart to like write out like how you'd apply this into all areas of life and then take action on one of those, right? Now, the great thing about positive focus too is what I actually use it for a lot for is when there's negative things that happen, right? So, I mean, it's probably about 1 o'clock here, and I've already had like a lot of shitty stuff happen today from costs getting out of control to I would say quotes for turf that were double, what we expected, and you name it. I mean, just crazy stuff, right? And like, so I would take one of these experiences and run it through that frame, like what happened, right? Just the fact of what happened. And then the second one would be, why is it positive? So this is harder now, right? But what we're doing is reframing an event, right? So something negative happened. Let's extract something positive from it, right? So we're training our brain to reframe events, right? So yes, this was a bad event, but what's a positive thing that happened? And sometimes you really got to look for it, right? That silver lining. And then once you got it, like, what's the positive that happened out of that, right? And then it's like, what's the lesson here, right? What's the lesson? And the lesson for, can be like, for me, like to this morning was like, hey, do more research on the front end. I didn't do enough research, right? I didn't contact enough people, right? So how would I apply that in different areas of my life? Hey, like the next training program I'm going in, maybe I need to do a little bit more research of what I need right now versus what I want to do. What do I need to make it better, right? How would I do that for my spirituality? Oh, hey, you know what? What's one of my next goals for being? I need to research it more. You see what I'm saying? Now, obviously, I'm running this like pretty fast, but the point is, like, what is the 20-minute replay in my mind is called positive focus. So whether it's a positive event that happened or even a negative one, like reframing it and extracting it and talking about that, because once again, we're practicing, right? We're practicing to make our brain start seeing things a certain way, okay? Number 3 is random acts of kindness. And I wouldn't even just say, okay, so some people say random acts of kindness. I would add to that and say conscious random acts of kindness, right? Because, I've gotten into this really, habit of holding doors for everybody and stuff. It's so automatic that I actually, it is automatic, right? It's just automatic. But conscious meaning like you make a choice, like, hey, you know what? Today I'm going to, pay for someone's coffee. I'm going to do this for charity. I'm calling up, Habitat for Humanity. And that actually is one of the next things we're doing. We're going to go and build houses as together with the gym fam, right? So, and we're actually going to do a charity boot camp to raise money to pay Habitat for Humanity so we can come out there and build houses, right? But that's conscious, right? I'm consciously doing that. And it can be a small thing, right? Write an appreciation note, a thank you note, a gratuity note, like to someone with a, $25 Amazon gift card or something like that, which is a couple of things that I did this week. And once again, but when it's conscious, it's a lot different than something that you're used to doing. Which, look, I'm not saying if you're used to doing like acts of kindness, fantastic, right? But being more conscious about it and like sitting down and being aware and like picking what you're going to do, big difference. Number 3 is a complete unplug. Is that number 3? No, that's number 4. A complete unplug, right? So complete unplug, I think it can come in different ways, right? It can come, everybody might think like, oh man, that's the vacation, right? Like the long vacation, I'm completely unplugging. But I would say it's more than that. So on a daily basis, it can be like, hey, you come home, spend time with your family, phone is off, internet is off, emails, like, man, none of that is happening, right? That's an unplug. Right, you disconnect from all the input, from all that, the social media, all the stuff that's hitting you. It could be I just went to Portland, and it wasn't a complete unplug, but like one day it was to meet my former coach. But it creates space, right? So I unplug, I move away from stuff. I still get my work done, but it's like a lot of the day, like I literally will either not look at my phone. I'm doing stuff. I'm walking through the city, going to a new restaurant, like even a half a day. And of course, then you have these like mini sabbaticals or longer sabbaticals where you're like, all right, for 3 days I'm gone, like I'm off the grid, like I'm actually going somewhere, but my phone doesn't work. I'll go to a Wi-Fi cafe in the morning, hour of stuff done, boom, and I'm back to, doing other stuff. So, and the thing is, the complete unplug is necessary for a lot of reasons. I would say what I said at the beginning, the reason I went for Brazil is to like separate yourself from, it's like almost, looking at your life from the outside in. At least that's what it helps me do. Being on planes, believe it or not, is very calming to me. unless it's in crazy turbulence where I fucking feel I'm gonna die. But I've done like 1,000 flights or something like that, so that's not a big issue anymore. But like when I'm in a plane, I'm looking down at the world, and it like relaxes me and makes me kind of look at my life from a distance. And I think that unplugging does that a lot, right? It's you go somewhere and you essentially your brain has, because the thing is, like when you have so much data coming in, right? It's very hard to actually think clearly and for your brain to make connections and solve problems. And you'll notice that you never get a solution to a problem like when you're really thinking about it. Actually, I was reading that like how a lot of entrepreneurs get it in a shower, or like for me, guys that train with me will let you know that. Like I'll be lifting weights and like I'm done with the set and I run into the office and it's like, what? And I'll get like one of these and boom, I'm writing down my notes, right? Because I just had a fucking idea. I always get ideas when I'm in nature, and I always get like ideas when I travel because I'm away from it. I'm not getting bombarded. See, like right now when I'm in Seattle, I'm getting bombarded by stuff all the time, right? It's dealing with the building, new online coaching program. Like one thing ends, I got 10 other things to do. So it's difficult to do that. And so I have to create these scenarios and these spaces for that creativity to happen, for those solutions to happen. It's like I said, if you read through some research, you'll see how like your subconscious will solve problems, right? It's like when you give it the space to, or like you'll write down a problem that you want to solve and go to sleep, and sometimes you wake up and you'll have it. There's a lot of different ways you can go around it, but unplugging is definitely very, very important from a lot of different perspectives. And it makes you happier. Like, I don't care what anybody says. I mean, if you go on vacation, automatically you feel, you're like, oh man, I'm unplugged, I'm happier, right? But how can you do that throughout the week even, and throughout a month without just like vacations? So that's something that I'd really have you strongly consider. Number 5 is hitting flow. Now, I hope that you read the book. It's called Flow. It's the guy that wrote it is called Mikhail. And the thing is, I can never pronounce, which is crazy because I'm European. My last name is Hocevar. It's actually Hocevar, right? And I just don't want to butcher the dude's name. But he's look up the word flow. And I'm gonna talk as if he's my good buddy Mikhail. So there we go. But what is flow? Okay, this is literally a quote from him. Being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away. Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one. And it's like playing jazz. Okay, so think about it this way. Flow is when you're so engaged in what you're doing that everything falls away. At the beginning of the podcast, I said we were laughing, smiling, like working hard, playing foot volley. I was in flow. Like everything disappeared. Like during that time, not one thought about any issue, problem, or anything happened. I was just there, just playing. It was like, right? And obviously you can go into flow really deeply and there's a whole science behind that. And a great book to check out for that is The Rise of Superman. Who's also the guy that ended up writing Stealing Fire, but more about that in another podcast. And, flow is just a state where you're engaged, like you're challenged, right? You're challenged because the activity that you're doing is challenging to a degree where, you can't just be like, whatever, right? There's a lot of stuff in life that we do, like whatever. And I think it's very important, one, it kind of veer off here, but it's why it's important to be interested in people, be engaged in people, right? Because this is something that most people just don't do nowadays. But flow is, being in flow makes us happy. It literally makes everything disappear but what we're doing. And that can be a lot of different things. And, that's one of the reasons why drawing for me does that. Drawing puts me into flow a lot of times, right? Basketball does that, right? There's other things that make me do that. And when you recognize those things, do more of those things. Now, there's a little chart. So I want to let you know this because this is great for coaching too. So if you're a coach, if you're a coach, if you're a parent, like honestly, if you're a business leader, this matters for everybody. But imagine a chart, right? Essentially like on one side, you have, challenge level, right? So from low to high, right? So it's very low challenging, whatever the skill you're doing is, or it's very high, right? And on the bottom part, you have skill level. How skilled are you, right? Is your skill level low? Is your skill level high? And imagine that depending on where in between those charts you go, you might go. So, for instance, a low skill. If somebody has a low skill set and you create a super high challenge for them, they'll be anxious. That won't be good for them, right? That's definitely not going to be good for them. If somebody that's really high skill set and the challenge is low, they're going to be like apathetic or bored, right? Because it's just not challenging enough for them. And so like if you go around that wheel, you go from anxiety, worry, apathy, boredom, relaxation, right? So a high skill level with a challenge level that's so is relaxing, right? Then you have control. So control is like somewhere where I'm skilled and it's pretty hard, but it's for me it's just like it's almost like it's pretty easy and controlled, right? And then right there is flow. And so flow usually is actually about 5, people are saying different numbers now, but like 5% harder than what your kind of best is, right? It's like it's challenging. It's pushing you, but it's not pushing you too much. Because if it pushes you too much, then you start getting anxious, right? So, I mean, think about it, right? If you're playing basketball at a high school level and you trying to do stuff that Steph Curry does, man, you might get anxiety and like quit, right? So that's the kind of thing that you want to think about. And flow in this, this is something you want to kind of think about for yourself, but also for your team. How do you challenge a person enough, right, to make the challenge level be in line with just a little bit above the skill level? That's how people grow. That's how people get better. That's how they're excited and they end up being in flow. Because people do want to, like we're built to be intrinsically pushed to become better, right? Progress equals happiness. That's one of the, Tony Robbins talks about this, but man, you could have everything you thought that you ever wanted and stop making progress in life, in different areas of your life, and you won't be happy, right? So that's why flow is so important. It's like, one, how do you get in flow, both in the work that you do or in activities that just make you happy? Because like I said, flow is one of the 7 ways to become happy now. Number 6 is meditations. And we talked about meditation a lot. I think the biggest thing that, there's been so much research in science now to show that meditation is one of the easiest ways to essentially to become happier. It rewires the brain it changes where, the brain worries and stresses less. So there's less focus on that. And it's a lot more calmer. And you can start meditating as little as 2 minutes a day, right? I think the biggest thing is like, I got to do 20. No, like if you're not doing any and you just start with 2 is so little, right? It's a little chunk and it's easier to focus on to where you can go like, okay, cool, I'm going to start with that, right? And doing it consistently, like literally can, and you'll see people that have started doing it, if you do like a 30-day meditation challenge and just do 2 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day, legitimately like write down how do you feel after those 30 days. And you'll see most people that will go like, man, like I'm just on a base level, I'm calmer, I'm more focused, I'm just happier in general. And, when I started, I actually went, I think almost 90 days without breaking the loop. And now I'm kind of trying to get back to being consistent with it. But I could tell a significant difference. And now when I do it, it's just, I call it the reset button. It really is. It's been crazy up until now. If I went and meditated for 10 minutes, I will be in a better mood. I would be more calm. If I had some stress and anxiety and like these crazy thoughts, like that's going to bring them down, period. So meditating, once again, like if you did it right now for 5 minutes and, you can go a lot of different ways with this. I love the apps, Headspace, Calm, 10% Happier, just focusing on your breath, doing binaural beats. Like I switch those around. So I don't stick to one thing. I did a Shaya like mantra meditation for quite a long time. But I just find that like I'm definitely a novelty seeker in that sense. So changing things up for me is good. And if you find yourself being that type of person, it's cool. Just change it up. You just want to end up getting the result out of it. Number 7 is 5 gratitudes. And, you could do 3, 5. Actually, there's a lot of different things that work really well. What I'm working on now, once again, like let me first prephrase it that I'm not doing all of this every day. And I have to keep coming back to this. The reason I shot this is because, in Brazil, like I went away into this different environment that really kind of like snapped me out and was like, hey, dude, like you could be, so much more fulfilled and happier on a daily basis if you just practiced it and chose it. And that's why I wanted to share this with you. So in the morning, if I do, and you can do this, like if you miss it in the morning, don't trip, do it at night. It's like, 3 things that you're grateful for. But the great thing about the morning is that you can do like 3 things that you're, 3 things and or people that you're grateful for, but 3 things that you're looking forward to that day. And that's actually one of the things that also makes people happier, is looking forward to something. Now, there's a big difference between, constantly focusing on a future and not being present, to going like, hey, I'm really looking forward to having coffee with my friend that I haven't seen in a while. Man, I'm really looking forward to the training session with the crew. I'm really looking forward to like getting done with this project today and doing my last videos, because then it's completed, right? So having like 3 things that you're looking forward to and 3 to 5 things that you're grateful for is fantastic to do in the morning. And at night, what I like to do is, and like I said, if you can get on a daily basis with this, fantastic. If it's a weekly one, that's fine too. And that is like your 3 wins, like your 3 biggest wins. Like what is something that you did great today? And it could be like, man, it was so awesome to see my friend. Man, I had a great training session today. Hey, I learned a new kettlebell exercise. Hey, I made this new meal that I really love, and I'm going to continue to do it because it was simple and like I feel confident at it. Like it can be anything, but it's your wins, and it's important that we appreciate the things that we do. I just talked to my friend Krebsy today. I mean, we talk almost every day, but we both talking about how we don't appreciate enough what we've achieved. And I know I'm definitely at fault. I mean, I can say at fault for that. That's just something that I'm working on. I'm always pushing. Like I look at my to-do list. If I showed them to you, it's kind of like crazy. It looks like HTML code, but I don't do enough of that. So constantly bringing myself back to giving like, well, what are your 3 to 5 wins today? It makes you go like, yeah, this is the horizon I'm pushing for, but this is the gap. And remember how we talked about contrast? How travel sometimes can give you contrast. Like, wow, I'm so grateful for everything I have. Like, look, I'm going to this place, and man, like they're happy with what they have, and they don't have anything like the stuff that we have, right? So contrast, that creates contrast as well. I'm shooting for all of this, but hey, look, I already achieved this. I was here, now I'm here. Wow, I feel good. I feel fulfilled. I've done stuff. I've had a good day, right? Whereas just going like, oh shit, like here's all the stuff I haven't done. Here's all the things I still need to do. Man, that will get you like that. That's the fastest way to constant anxiety. I should know this, by the way. You know what I'm saying? I should know this. Like, so, when I talk about this, it's people say, oh, you're an expert on this. I'm like, I'm constantly working on this every day too. I mean, I study the shit out of this and because I want to help others do it. But on a daily basis, I'm also helping myself do it. And I have coaches that, keep me in check for all this stuff as well. So that's important to understand. And I'm not sitting here, I'm sure that like, the world's biggest happiness experts are working on this stuff all the time, because it just, like I said, for a lot of people, default maybe, anxiety and stress, and you got to work hard at it. But it's worth it because, man, like we're all seeking happiness, right? Like at the end of the day, if I ask you for, you're like, oh man, I want to get a promotion. Why do you want to get a promotion? Well, because, man, I want to, I just want to make more money. You know what I mean? Like, okay, why do you want to make more money? Oh, so I can get the house for my family because like they deserve it. Okay, so why do you want to do that? Because that'll make me, like at the end, it's always going to be like that. So that's going to make me happier, right? So, think about that. But the 5 gratitudes is number 7. And there's a quote by Charles Dickens that I wanted to share. Like this is a big one for me that popped out that talks about the whole gratitude. I would say drill, and that is, I hate calling it drill, just the exercise, daily practice. Reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man has many, and woman, right? Not your past misfortunes, of which all men have some, right? So I'm going to repeat that. Reflect upon your present blessings, of which many men have many. Every man has many, sorry. Not your past misfortunes, of which all men have some, right? So that's pretty powerful, right? That we usually focus. Remember at the beginning I said it's like, find the problem, solve the problem, look for the problem. That's pretty much what it is. We focus on the misfortunes, of which, yeah, we all have some, but we don't focus on the blessings, of which we have many. And so that's a big part of it. Some other things that I'm going to finish off with, like, because I could really, I mean, I have like journals of notes on things like this, but I just felt like I wanted to share things that like you can do today, you can do right now. There's drills, there's exercises, there's daily practices that you can take and start working on, and it will make you like literally think better, feel better, perform better. It will make you better, I would say get along better with people. I mean, you name it, right? Another like tip is like infusing your surroundings with positivity. Now I've talked about environments and how environments trigger behaviors and why, traveling is so important. But hey, look, it could be even, like I said, when you walk into your room or your office, what's the music playing? What's the picture that's there? Right now I'm in a process of like a huge, we're moving into this new gym, and I'm like really focusing on a lot of these things that cost a lot of money, but they'll make a huge difference in the environment. So like we're bringing an awesome like artist in, Alexander Cod, who's doing murals in the gym, and I can't say which ones yet. We're working with my friends at Die Cut Stickers to create like literally logos on walls, like our values, our mission. So everywhere you go is this positive environment, this environment that challenges you. That like, so when you walk in, you're just like, man, you're there to be better. But it's like, obviously positive surroundings is also the people you surround yourself with, getting outside, like, man, it's such a huge thing, like nature. I've talked about this, like nature and movement, like getting outside and just moving. You go for a 15, 20-minute walk, like on a path with trees, and like, you're going to feel better, period. You're going to be happier. It's just proven stuff, like, and so that infusing that, like, another one, like the people actually don't talk about enough as being a part of making you happier is spending money. Now check this out. I paused there because the key is to not spend money on things, but spend money on experiences. And, I love, like I said, I love travel. I love like if I go to cooking classes or Samba, or I take my friends out to stuff. I just, booked this event called Micah's Voice, which is, it's a great charity. And I'm going out there with my buddy to LA, and it's at Babyface's house. With one of the guys from Boys to Men, so they're singing. It's it obviously costs some money, but it's going to a great cause. It's an experience, man. Like I'd much rather spend it on that. Like I spend majority of my money on education, experiences. My team here at Vigor, and have for the last 8 years, 9 years, and those are the things that I remember. Like the things that we do, the lessons we learn, the travel. Like I love spending time with my friends at dinners, like just hanging out with people, whether it's, cooking together or going to a new restaurant. Like, man, I love that. Like that, even if it's a $400 bill, I'd rather spend that, spend it on that than, spend it on some clothes. Although here and there, I do like to buy myself some Nike gear, as you may know. But spend money, but not on stuff, but on experiences. Like, man, you make money to spend it. Obviously, look, we do a separate show on investments and things like that, which I'm big into. But, there's a big difference because most people spend money on things, thinking that the thing was going to fulfill them, or like, hey, I'm going to look like this, and that person's going to, appreciate me more or whatever. And it's bullshit, man. Spend money on education, spend money on experiences. That will make you happier. And the last one that I'm going to share is like exercising a signature strength. And whether you do like something like Strength Finder 2.0, like this test, I mean, there's a lot of different stuff, or just, texting your friend and being like, hey, what do you think is my biggest strength? What do you think is my biggest weakness? What's something I can work on? You'll find that like people close to you will be like, oh man, I really think that your biggest strength is this and this. But if you exercise your biggest strength daily, that will make you happier. So I'm like super curious. I have a love for learning. So if I don't learn every day, if I don't read for 30 minutes to an hour every day or study a course, man, I will literally find myself being more in a mood or anxious or stressed out, right? So that's a huge and important thing. It could be, teaching, also leading and teaching. Like for instance, so I love doing that, like the go-giver mentality. Like we talked about acts of kindness, but certain of my strengths like are on that leadership path. So, do I do something to lead every day? Now it could be a coaching client. It could be a business coaching client. It could be, like the other day I'm just at Panera. I go to Panera, I eat lunch, I read a book. One of the waiters there is like, man, what you reading? and I started talking about it. We had like this 15-minute conversation, and I was just like, hey man, I was just like, hey, just take this book. And I actually had another one at home. So, and he was like, dude, you serious? I'm like, nah, man, just take this book, but just promise me you'll read it, man. I'm going to see you here. I'm going to ask you about, what the book is talking about. And we had this conversation. I'm like, look, man, we live in a day and age where, you can go to the library and like, study anything you want on any subject you want. You can pull up the YouTube or go to Creative Live and buy a course for $49 that, teaches you whatever, right? And so for me, that was like helping this guy, like mentoring this dude, like, being in a leadership position. That made me happier that day. I left, Panera. I was like, man, that was good. And I try to do that as much as often. I take a lot of time out throughout the week to do those things where some people might be like, oh, man, that's unproductive. What's the ROI on that? You know what I mean? I'm going to, this is one of my favorite things that Gary Vee's ever said, right? Because he's like, man, what's the ROI on your mother? Like, what the fuck, right? Like, it's like, what's the ROI on your relationship? Man, I fly out to LA a lot to hang out with like Jay Ferrugia because, man, the ROI on that, like, is so much, fulfillment and happiness of spending time together, doing stuff, whatever, and, you can't put a price on that. Like going to breakfast and lunch and meetings with people and helping them out and hearing like what they're doing and, what they're excited about. What's the ROI on that, man? Like shit, like happiness, you know what I mean? So, with that said, I like exercising signature strengths, but I'll leave it with this: people. I don't know about you, man, but like, some people are more social, some people are more introverted, extroverted. Like for me, communities, tribes, like friendships and relationships are so much of what fulfills me. Whether it's doing challenging things together with people and friends, whether it's exploring, experiencing stuff, whether it's just hanging out. Like sometimes it's just like being, in a company of somebody, not even saying shit, but it's like that, people tend to be happier. And this is another thing that like I've studied and did research on is that people that are in tough times reach out, right? They reach out to, I would say, to their social network. Always come like they come through better and they're more fulfilled and they're happier. And with that said, I do have a couple of I pulled the 52 fake out on you, but I hope you're not mad because there is a couple of last ones that I want to share with you. And like, one of them was social investment. Is like I said, man, the more you spend time with people and invest into your social networks, and that doesn't mean Facebook and Instagram. I'm not talking about like real human connection. You will be way more fulfilled. And a big part is like if anybody's ever heard of the Lasada line, it just means like the ratio of positive to negative interactions. Like where researchers have done studies that if they find a relationship and there's the ratio is not at least 3-to-1 but preferably 5-to-1. So meaning that the communication is 5 positive things said to 1 negative thing said. That relationship will not only survive but thrive. But when it's less than 3-to-1, I think it was like 94% like of those relationships got broken up, whether it was a marriage, whether it was something else. And that, that's how people study also environments of businesses. And you start coming in and there's a lot of negative talk to very few positive reinforcements. Man, that's a big red flag. And if you own a business, if you're in a business, I would have you really pay attention to that because that is kind of like a precursor for things not going that great. And coaching is the same way. Like we always say, praise, correct, praise. Sometimes it'll be praise, correct, praise, meaning, praise first, correct, and then praise again because positive reinforcement works. It makes people happier and more fulfilled. And then because of that, it gets ingrained into the brain easier. So that Lasada line, it's something to pay attention to. And if you find yourself like in a relationship right now where it's like, 5-to-1 negative to positive, man, you got to check yourself, or maybe it's not the right thing to be in. And like I said, I've been there, done that. Like I speak from experience, and a lot of things can be changed. But look, you can only control yourself and influence yourself to change, and practice for yourself to change. So that's one of the things. There's another I call falling up. And falling up essentially means capitalizing on the downs in your this is what I talked about earlier. When you have shitty stuff happen, like what was the lesson from it? Like to me, that's falling up, right? Like change the counteract to positive one. And we talked about positive focus. So this is kind of connection to this. I always sit down and go like, okay, here's this crazy, shitty stuff that happened. I have a saying, like, I don't want to necessarily say I trademark this, but this is what I tell myself, and it kind of shifts my focus. And I say, when some crazy stuff happens, and like I said, the more you kind of push yourself and challenge yourself, it will. And I say, man, this is going to make for a fucking good story. And like, it makes me giggle a little bit, and it goes like, I almost look at it as like, man, I'm the director and producer of this movie of my life. And I'm like, when crazy stuff happens, I'm like, man, here we go. Here's another twist in the movie. Man, this is going to be a good one, right? This is going to be a good one. So like that shifts and frames things different for me in my life. I call this falling up, right? Like, learn from every shitty thing that happens, extract the lesson, apply it to life, and you get better. And guess what? If you solve a problem, the right problem, you get a better problem. If you solve if you have the wrong problems, you solve them. It doesn't matter. You're in a cul-de-sac and you're just constantly in a shitty place, and you kind of got to get away from that. Like the ripple effect. Last thing, a lot of times in our charity boot camps, I always say, hey guys, it's everybody can say like, well, if I just come in here and drop in and bring some food or do the $10 donation, what does that do? But I'm like, man, ripples create waves, and like the more ripples there are, it can create a tsunami. And I think like, the ripple effect is, I think that like a lot of happiness is if you spread the happiness around you, right? I know I get very fulfilled knowing that I make other people better or happier or whatever. And you can't base, all of your happiness on that, but let's be honest, sometimes giving is selfish, and it's fine. Like Tony Robbins says, the secret of living is giving. And I know it's got me out of some of the toughest parts of my life is I dedicated myself to giving more back. And it really did. Like, it really, it was almost, it's like you say it's selfish, but like, you know what? It's good. Like, you're giving, you're doing something good for someone else, and you're actually giving probably even more so to yourself, but practice the ripple effect. And it's like, to me, it's always been like, if you learn something, if you do something well, man, it's your gift, and it's your duty to share it with the world. And if you don't, it's kind of like that, man, the most valuable real estate on the planet is the graveyard, and it's full of people that took all their ideas, their goals, their dreams, their inventions, with them, and never gave them to the world. And, like you've heard me say this before, and I didn't make this shit up, but it's, like die empty. I want to die empty, man, or as close to as empty as possible. So I have the fewest regrets, and I put everything out there, and I'd rather look like dumb, and be fulfilled and go like, I did some dumb shit, but like, you don't remember that. You know what I mean? Like you remember the things like you wish you would have done, the regrets, and I don't want to have those, man. And so with that, die empty, spread happiness, with the ripple effect. And I really hope that this show at least not only gave you some actual strategic methods, but if it was even just a wake-up call and it's getting you back to like, oh shit, I say you got to keep coming back to it. You got to keep coming back to it. It's work. It's daily practice. It's spiritual weightlifting. It's mindset weightlifting, man. It's, it's easy to see weightlifting in a gym, but this is what this is, daily practice. It's like lifting your weights with your brain, with your spirit. So, make sure you practice that every day too, because, body, mind, spirit combined is game over. It's a game changer, and you'll feel, live a more fulfilled life. And guess what? Be happy, great work, big success. Be happy, great work, big success. That's the route. All right, Coach Luka out. If you love this podcast, make sure you give it a review, that 5-star review, guys. Like, that helps so much. It helps spread the word. It helps, everybody, more people listen to it and see it. And, if you believe that more people should hear this message and apply it, man, that would really help out. I really appreciate you for that. Coach Luka's out. I'll see you next time. Peace.